The first eclipse of 2021 is a lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, and today we're going to talk about it. Hi everyone, I'm Donna Stellhorn, your practical astrologer, here to talk to you today about the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius on May 26th. We're going to do an overview of what's going on in this chart, and then we're going to go sign by sign to see what is up for you. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm Donna Stellhorn. I do videos on astrology and feng shui, and I'm really happy that you've joined us. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button because it really helps out the channel. If you don't know already, I've written 16 books, and I also write the weekly and monthly predictions on various websites for places like horoscope.com, astrology.com. And I just want to take a quick moment to say that I do offer readings and private lessons in astrology and feng shui. There's some information about that in the description box below. So this is a lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. Now, a lunar eclipse brings change, and the type of changes that it brings are due to the fact that there is the earth, that is all the mundane activities and things that you need to do, standing between what you want or need, that's the moon, and your sense of self, which is the sun. So it's like the things in your daily life seem to be impeding you finding fulfillment. And this can, lunar eclipse happen 2 or 3 times a year, and so it's just something to help us get back on track. Now, it is possible that you're getting a direct hit from this eclipse, and that does mean that the changes in your life could be larger than just some little blip in the road where you're saying, oh, I have to make this subtle change. So, and it also depends on how much you are leaning in towards growth, how much you are looking towards change and adapting to new circumstances. That's something that Sagittarius energy really calls for, is adaptation. And so the easier it is to go through changes is when we lean in. So if you were born between the 22nd of a month and the last day of the month, or you were born on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd day of the month, you are being directly hit by this eclipse. Now, usually you'll receive a message about a week before about what this is going to be about. We'll also be looking at what houses it's hitting in your solar chart so that you can know how you're being affected. Now, you can look at your sun sign, the little segment on your sun sign, but also consider looking at your moon sign, since this is a lunar eclipse, and also look at your rising sign, because those are the 3 areas where you're likely to get hit. Now, if you know all 3 of those, then your rising sign may be the most direct energy this time. So, but again, that depends, because I'll be using a solar chart, or I shouldn't say that, I'm using a 0 Aries chart. And so let's say you have a very late degree rising, then it's not quite going to match up. And this, if this is the case, you may want to consult an astrologer and say, hey, I'm getting hit by this eclipse. What's this about, and how can I prepare? Now, I don't mean to make this sound ominous. Again, we have 2 to 3 lunar and solar eclipses every year. And so this is something that we go through every 6 months or so, where the universe gives us an opportunity to make adjustments. It's just when it hits your chart, specifically, aspecting your planets, that's when you find the bigger changes. Now, the changes generally unfold over a period of time. So that is that a week or so before the eclipse, or at the actual time of the eclipse, you receive the message of what is changing or what you should change in your life. And then over the next few months, that then changes. Now, you might say to yourself, well, what if I don't want to change? And yes, this is a free will place. You don't actually have to change. The universe is just suggesting that this is for your life path, to consider something new, because that is the essence of growth. But if if you're getting signs that say, that perhaps you should consider moving or something like that, and you don't want to move, then you may say to yourself, all right, why am I getting these signs? Is there something that I'm not paying attention to, or is there something, that I'm already aware of that I think is a problem, but I'm tolerating it? They say that, what you tolerate, you accept into your life. And so, but when we say we're tolerating something, we may not think that we're accepting it. So, and yes, the eclipses are traditionally difficult because we generally don't want to make the change. We generally don't want to go in that direction because it'll be new or scary or just a lot of work. But the news about the eclipse is that after the eclipse is done, the few months down the road, you are so happy you made the change. And this is like across the board. I find it over and over and over again with clients that if they make the changes, they say, I am so happy I did that. So this particular eclipse in Sagittarius is about looking at your own limiting beliefs, looking at the internal rules that you have, and deciding whether you came up with those rules or if those are rules that someone else suggested for you that you actually just took on but maybe didn't really think through to say, is this really what I want? An example of that might be that you may have the belief that you must have an advanced degree from college to be a success. Now, that could be that is your rule, that you really valued education, but from circumstances, you were blocked from getting that advanced degree. And so then, if that's truly your rule, then it would be wise to go then look to see how you could gain that degree. But it also could be that society was just telling you that advanced degree was necessary for success because we see out in the world that people with all kinds of different education levels have achieved success. So this eclipse is about examining your rules, especially those that are connected to limiting beliefs. The second part of this eclipse is, again, it's Sagittarius, so it is about what are you studying? What are you learning? Where are you growing? Or are you just endlessly scrolling and seeing what catches your eye? So having some directed behavior, some sort of plan to say, I want to learn videography, or I want to learn how to sew, or I want to learn how to build a house, or to do permaculture, or I want to learn how to make a perfect omelet in one of those cast iron pans where generally it always sticks. So any of those things, or any of the myriad of things out there, but to really say, this is what I'm studying right now, this is what I want to learn. This is also about having an awareness of your bigger purpose. Now, finding your bigger purpose can be challenging for some people. They may feel that it's supposed to come to them in a neat little package, but oftentimes your bigger purpose is an amalgamation of all of the different interests that you have and the challenging directions that are opening up for you. And so bigger purpose, if you have a lot of planets in your first quadrant, would be how to take care of self, how to make sure that you're okay. If you had a lot of planets in the second quadrant, then that would be more how can you give to other people, what service can you provide. If you had a lot of planets in the third quadrant, then it would be more about, how can you amass resources or how to cooperate with others in using resources. And then, of course, the fourth quadrant, what can you do to make humanity better? And if you don't know, where you have a lot of planets in different quadrants and all of that, there is some information about getting a copy of your chart in the description box below. You just email me your birth information and I will send you a chart. So a lot of looking at your own journey is is kind of cobbling together all of the signs and symbols that keep coming up in your life. That is, what are you attracted to, especially in the positive, in music and art and literature and TV and video games, all of these things. What are the overriding themes that keep happening in your life? And what are the symbols that are happening? Do you really notice encounters with hawks or with squirrels? Do you often see numbers that pop up over and over again? These types of things can give us clues about the bigger overarching path in your life. So, and this is also about incorporating spirituality into your daily life. And that starts with just an awareness of the planets themselves. I mean, the joy that I get when I see the moon rising, when we got to see Jupiter and Saturn really close together recently, and when we just see the planets rising and setting, it's very exciting. But then also, having that mindfulness and reverence in doing things, like when I sweep the porch, I like to picture that the negative energy is being swept out and swept away from the house. When I do a space clearing, I'm calling in the positive energy. Even when I add certain herbs to what I'm cooking, I am thinking about the energy of those herbs and how that is going to enrich me as I eat the food. So I think that you can add spirituality into your life, whether you do something that's very structured, like prayer or reading sacred texts, or if you do something that I would call more magical. Now, the other two highlights for this chart is that Jupiter is now in Pisces, and Pisces is about finding a sense of comfort, a sense of ease, and also kind of an escape. So as we start to interact with people again, there's going to be some part of you, well, maybe not everybody, but a lot of you who have this desire for solitude again, because we've just spent a really long time having solitude and maybe we feel a little tired of it now. But as we go out and start interacting with people, we may want to have that little touch of solitude again. This energy of Jupiter and Pisces also expands intuition, and so you do need to be aware that you can be picking up a lot of energies from other people, and this includes from the media. You can pick up energies there, so you do need to make sure you're doing some sort of clearing or that you're putting up boundaries between you and the world. And also Pisces rules addictions, and so whatever it is you're addicted to, you may get more cravings than usual, and so this is a natural response of having Jupiter in Pisces, and you can combat it through awareness and saying, okay, I am craving this thing, and that's okay that I'm craving it. I don't need to give in to it. Then the other significator this time is that Mars is moving to trine Neptune, which is a really interesting combination. So this is this idea of Neptune being both the plans and also sort of that fuzziness of not being able to know where to start. So the Mars, of course, wants to take action. And so sometimes this energy will be that you have the big plan and you can't wait to get started and you jump right in. But it also can be saying, I have to get started, but there's so many different directions I can go with this. I'm not sure which way to go. And the solution here is to honor the Neptune by taking a few minutes out for meditation. And for this, I would do like a journaling meditation, starting with a question, what is the best thing for me to do next? Or how do I start this project? Or what's the next step on this project? So write that on the piece of paper and then clear your mind, listen to the sounds that are around you, listen to your breathing, just be very present. And as you do that, what happens is the universe will send you messages. And then you jot those down. And in the course of just a couple of minutes, you could find that you have a very clear idea of what to do. And then, of course, because you really want to activate the Mars, leap up and do that thing, even if it's just for a few minutes. So, give yourself a couple of minutes to get it started and get everything in place. And then you'll find that even if you have to break off and do something else, you'll be able to go back to that thing and jump right in. Okay, so let's go around the wheel. Okay, Aries natives, you guys are doing this lunar eclipse in your area of legal matters, education, spirituality, as well as travel. And so these are the areas that could get interrupted or that some sort of material change is happening in. Always remember that with eclipses, you will get some sort of message about what needs to change. Maybe it's this little nagging feeling that, you have to re-up your DMV paperwork, or that, something for school is needed either this semester or for a future semester. Perhaps you're just feeling a little disconnected from your spiritual life. And so any of these things could come to you either as an inkling or actual signs in your life. And by signs, like it could be like a letter in the mail that says, hey, we really need this application filled out, or you're missing this data, or something like that. Of course, if you have some sort of intuition about that there is going to be a problem, it's really good to investigate this. And you will have a little bit of time because, before the eclipse you can do it, or after the eclipse, because this is just something where, the universe is saying that perhaps you want to look into this and change this. Now, on a personal level, of course, this is about your belief systems and how those are informing your actions and helping you guide your life. So it is really good to look at what your personal rules are, and if those are beneficial for yourself, or if you pick those up along the way and now you're finding that they are not as helpful as you were hoping. So this is the type of self-examination that can really help you grow, especially spiritually, but also it can help you spot a block that is holding you back from love or business success or something like that. Of course, as I always say, the eclipse is like going through a door, and once you have gone through that door, then things start to get better. So during the actual eclipse time, which is like a week before and a week after, it can feel really uncomfortable because this might have been something you were putting off, or perhaps other people have put you into circumstances that you're not happy with. But as you go forward and work with this energies, you can find that things become much better. So that's why you do want to work with the energies. One of the things that this could be about is your attitudes about travel or attitudes about people who live elsewhere. And maybe that is what needs to have you look at it and see if you need to update those ideas. And that's challenging for most signs, but Aries, you're very good at pivoting. You're very good at looking at the bigger picture and then seeing how that can apply to you. So you might recognize that, yes, it's been very difficult to travel, but it's not always going to be this way. It also may be that the area that you're living in is welcoming in a lot of different people from different areas. And so you might be thinking this is fantastic, but if you're not thinking that's fantastic, maybe you have to look at why you're thinking this way. When it comes to relationships, you are doing a semi-sextile between Venus and Mars, and this does mean that there are some opportunities, albeit somewhat irritating ones, and that means that nothing's happening as smoothly as you would like. It takes a little bit more effort, and even then the results are a little bit bumpy. So that means that you can't quite get together on the day that you wanted, or circumstances mean you see each other for a shorter period of time. It's possible that when you get together, one of the two of you is not feeling so happy. Maybe you're uncomfortable about something else unrelated, but this makes it hard for you to relate. But I do want to say that this is still an aspect, and that does mean you can get together, and by being understanding about the other person's circumstances and letting them know about your circumstances, you could move forward. So the interesting thing too is that there is more energy of the other person reaching out to you, and so they're the ones who might be interrupting your schedule rather than the other way around. So you do want to be flexible. When it comes to your home life, you are pulling energy right from this eclipse. Of course, you always do pull the energy from the lunar eclipses, and so that's not that unusual, but it does mean that there could be some material changes going on at home. If you are living in a house, maybe you're renting, or maybe you own the house, and there are some recurring things going wrong, like recurring plumbing issues, or something to do with the HVAC system or something like that. These could be signs to say to you that maybe it's time to consider whether you are going to be staying in this house. So it's possible that you could be receiving signs that say this area itself where your house is isn't the best for your goals. Now, of course, without seeing your whole chart, that is difficult to say, but it is something where you can ask yourself the question, am I getting these recurring issues because I live in a 100-year-old house, or am I getting these recurring issues when I shouldn't be having them, and this is a sign that it is time to move on. When we look at your money, of course, first we see that Uranus that is still continuing to be in your house of money. And this time I want to remind you that this signals your ability to be resourceful. Now, it is very much about looking at unconventional ways of bringing in money. And so every once in a while, you should be asking yourself, how else can I make money? How could I make more money in less time? What are ways that would be more fun to make money, or more social to make money? These could give you some clues as you ask these questions. You might get signs or inspiration, or somebody just walks up and tells you because you've asked the question. So with this Uranus in the second house, really consider if you ask the right question, you're going to get some amazing and very interesting answers. When we look at the second house overall, you're pulling money from that Venus now in Gemini, and so that means that money sources could be coming from various sources, or they could be coming from directly from communication, transportation, or working with somebody and so there are more opportunities for you to make money. And this means if you communicate to others, maybe through sending out resumes or sending out sales proposals or things like that, you could get yourself additional money, or you could gather a second source of income. So when we look at your passive income sources and your business income, that Venus is doing an inconjunct to Pluto and a semi-sextile to Mars. And so you have opportunities, and none of those opportunities feel very comfortable. That means that you might be looking at your investments, and perhaps the stock market is taking a dip, as we talked about in the last video, because of the eclipses that we have and the approaching Mercury retrograde, where we often see there can be some corrections in the market. So you might be feeling uncertain about your investment decisions, or you might be thinking that your business income is going to drop off. But these are just the uncomfortable feelings. And of course, if you're in it for the long haul, you have nothing to worry about. If you are thinking more short term, then you need to dive in and get the information, because that Venus in Gemini in your house of communication says the information is there for you. So you want to, do some investigating, not just with the YouTubers that you listen to all the time, but actually listening to the counter view as well, or listening to a variety of different people speak on, the health of the marketplace, either that your business is in or that your investments are in. Now, when we look at money derived from career, now Jupiter has left your house, and now the protection that you had before has left. And I don't want to overemphasize this protection. This protection just means that you were getting more information about whether you could ask for a raise or get more hours or things like that. And even though it's left this house, it's still very close to the cusp, so it's likely you could still gain that information if you need it. Plus, this will be back later this summer, and so you will have another chance where things line up to ask for a raise. But it does show some weakness in your money derived from career, which again could be related to the economy. Maybe you're not getting as many hours, maybe sales are dropping off a little bit, and so commission is lower because there's no aspect between Venus and Uranus going on, and no aspect even with Venus and Saturn. So I think that when it comes to money derived from career, you probably want to just continue what you're doing because you show that it's steady, or it's dropping off just a little bit. So when it comes to your money derived from career, you're making about the same or slightly less, and this is the time to activate that Venus in your house of communications to brainstorm with yourself and others some new ideas for making money. Now, when it comes to riskier investments, and this would be like buying a franchise or, buying Bitcoin or something like that, something that is unconventional and where it's risky, and what you're doing is you're pulling energy from that sun in the third house, which does mean that you are really activating that ability to take in information. So it's more of an information gathering time. The sun is not making an aspect to Venus, and that does mean that the collection of actual profits is difficult. So this is just a time where you're pulling in the information or finding the help or reviewing a contract or something like that, and carefully looking over the data, and that's going to help you make the decision. Okay, Taurus natives, you guys are doing this lunar eclipse in your house of resources, power, and intimacy. And so starting with resources, this means that there could be some changes in what you are expecting from others. And that could be that your credit cards are not lowering interest rates like you wanted to, or you're having trouble finding additional credit. It could mean that you're doing some sort of crowdfunding and the contributions have leveled off, or this could be that somebody had promised you a sum of money and now that money is delayed. But whatever it is, there is some purpose from the universe to say that you can, through your own abilities and your own resourcefulness, find what you need. And that is, if one door closes, you want to go through a different door. And so it doesn't benefit you to keep knocking on the same door. And so if you're trying to refinance a house or something like that, there's no reason to argue with that banker when there's other banks in the world. It's the same thing if you are in an intimate relationship and it's not going the direction that you want. And yes, I know with relationships, there's a lot involved, the emotions and all that, but maybe it's time to step back and evaluate whether this is the right relationship for you if it's not going in the direction that you want. So you have the decision about being patient or taking some action and moving on. And so the eclipses often say that patience isn't going to work anymore, that you want to move forward and see if there's some other options for you. Now, I don't want to come across as this is all negative, because the eclipse could mean that you are making a breakthrough when it comes to your resources or some other important aspect of your life, because this area of the chart is also about power, and power is specifically you saying that you have the ability to make something happen. And so how do we explain this? The whole concept of giving away your power, which I'm sure you've heard that that statement is that you have the belief at the moment that somebody else controls your future. And while in the short term that could be true, like a boss could fire you or a landlord could tell you that you have to move out or something like that, the having power or taking your power back is to say, okay, then I will find another job or I'll find another place to live. So it is where you take some sort of obstacle in your life and you don't stop your whole entire life dead, but you say, how can I, go over this obstacle or under it or around it or through it or something? So the eclipses are very much about look for alternatives. And don't just get stopped by somebody else saying you cannot go forward. When it comes to relationships, you do have some interesting energy going on because Venus is making an inconjunct to Pluto and is semi-sextile to Mars. And this means that you can find somebody to go out with, but there are some obstacles. What a surprise. And so those obstacles could be that this person isn't quite sure that this relationship is good, or that they are pursuing you and you're not certain that they're the one, or there could be obstacles in your scheduling or obstacles in the distance that you live or other things like that. So, but because there's an aspect, there is a chance that this is a really good relationship for you. It just may be a little bit more difficult to get into, and so you have to say, all right, do I really want a relationship, or am I just trying to see somebody briefly and keep it really casual, because these aspects are a little too difficult for something casual. Now, in your existing relationships, this can mean that somebody you've been getting along with now starts to rub you the wrong way, but this is a temporary energy, and you should then look at yourself and say, well, why am I reacting this way? Are they really doing something that is not good? Is it crossing my boundaries? Or is this something where I'm actually irritated with something else in my life, and this is just not making me happy because I was hoping this would be the happy part of my life? Remember with eclipses that you are not the only person who is going through this. The other person could be going through major changes in their life, which is then affecting how they converse with you or whether they show up on time or things like that. When it comes to home life, you're pulling energy from that sun now in the second house, and this indicates that there is some sort of money discussion going on at home. Perhaps there's a need to spend some money to do some repairs, or maybe you've been thinking about getting a new sofa or something like that. You could also be going the other direction and trying to pull the family together to get on a budget, and maybe going very frugal or minimalist and frugal, or like prepper, minimalist, frugal, which is a hard combination to do. So there is some activity here related to your home and money. Of course, for some people that could be that you are moving, and so you are dealing with the expenses of moving, or perhaps even buying a house. And so all of this is where your focus is. When it comes to your money, you have an amazing second house this time, and that is the Sun, North Node, Venus, and Mercury. So money can come from multiple sources, and this could range from, even just a few dollars up into something that is well beyond what you're used to receiving. So you have all of this potential this time, and of course, potential has to be activated, and that means, thinking about what you can do to bring in more money, and you might be doing things on a spiritual level, you might be making phone calls or connecting with people. All of these things would help. When we look at your second house, it is pulling money from that Mercury that is in your second house, and that does say that it is good to pay attention to your spending, plug up the holes so that the money doesn't just come into your hands and then run right out again. Also looking at what you value in the way of, the finances. Is it that you really value, what you spend your money on, or do you value more the sense of security by having a good amount in the bank? So, and then what can you do about that? Because this is about communication. So it is asking friends and family their advice, or going outward and seeing what kind of advice is out in the world for you. Of course, Mercury will be going retrograde, and this does mean that you are going to have extra time to work on some of these money sources. That Mercury retrograde may delay some things, but it also could double some things, and we'll talk about that when we do our next video. Now, when we look at your investment income as well as income from business or a family business, you have the moon up there, and it is, that, of course, that moon that's going through the eclipse. And so that is saying that you are not as confident as you were a couple weeks ago about where maybe the markets are going or your ability to make money in your business, which is interesting because, you know, you're the second sign and now you're the second sign where I had to say this. So it may be a trend as we go through this to see that all the signs or most of the signs are doing this sort of feeling that the markets aren't as stable, which again is something that we talked about in the previous video of how when Mercury is retrograde and there are some eclipses, how it can be a disruptor in the marketplace. So when we also look at the ruler of your second house, Mercury, and its interaction with Jupiter, we have a very, very wide trine, and it's an out of sign trine. And so this means there's more of a desire to make things happen than actually the ability to make it happen. So this is more of an energy, I feel, of, you know, going back and looking at, you know, where can you economize, you know, where can you put money aside? Do you really need to make any big purchases now? Can you stop some subscriptions and things like that? So it's about looking at your finances and seeing if they're going the right direction. This is also a time where you might want to do some back office work where you say to yourself, you know, how can I shore up my business, my website, you know, get things better there. Sorry, I have this ancient website that I have not fixed, and so when I say that, I think, oh, I should put that on my list. Now, when it comes to money derived from career, now things are looking great because Jupiter has gone into that house, giving you both protection and expansion, and we have a square between Mercury and Neptune, and we also we had that wide trine between Mercury and Jupiter, so that one doesn't count, but I'll take that square. And that does mean that you have more opportunities to get a great job or to get more income in your current job. And so if you are a business owner and you heard all the things I just said about business, it is time to work side by side with your employees and treat it more like a job than a business. So if you're an absentee owner, you can't be absent at this time because that's where your money is. It is in working for an employer, even if that employer is kind of like you. When it comes to risky investments, it is that Mercury that will be going retrograde soon, and I mean very soon because it goes retrograde on the 29th. So that means that as you move forward on something, you're going to have to go back over something that you've done before. So when it comes to risky investments like things that are unconventional like Bitcoin, or if you're doing something that takes a lot of time, energy, or money to make happen, you do want to move very cautiously because even though this is good Mercury placement, I like it sitting there with the Venus, it is going to go retrograde, which means that you may have to rethink what it is you're doing, or you're going to get some new information that causes you to pause. Okay, Gemini natives, you guys are doing this eclipse in your house of relationships, and this means there could be some significant changes in an important relationship in your life, such as your sweetheart or a very close friend or a business partnership. Now, significant changes could mean that maybe one or both of you have been unhappy and now you need to have a big discussion about this, or it could be that somebody is moving some distance away and so you'll have to make some different arrangements or things like that. So, and of course their moving away may be related to their own family, and so maybe this is nothing so much to do about you and perhaps you just have to be supportive in this situation, but it is saying that some relationships are changing, and this is both how you relate to them and how they relate to you. And communication is going to be key because, well, you're a Gemini, and so that's your thing. I think it's interesting about this eclipse is it's having people look at the belief system that they have around a situation. And so this could be, what is your belief about how this relationship should unfold? And maybe looking at everything you say should about and examining to see whether that is correct or real or even beneficial. It's interesting also that the ruler of the first and the ruler of the seventh are making this very, very wide trine that is out of sign between, and this is between Mercury and Jupiter. And because of this, there's this energy of kind of like, like missing each other, like you are on one side of the room and they are clear on the other side of the room. And so it's hard to hear the person. It's hard to understand them. You can see them, okay, because it's this trine energy, but it's out of sign and it's almost out of orb, or technically it is out of orb by 4 minutes. I know that's not very long and I'm very strict about my orbs, but to me, it just feels like it's so far that there can be miscommunications between the two of you. And so, of course, all of the things I said about the distance is possible that, this person's already at a distance and so it's hard to communicate with them. But even if you're face to face with the person, you might be coming from a place that they are not. And so maybe defining your terms and defining what your expectations are before you start the discussion could help. When it comes to your home life, you're pulling energy from that Mercury that in a few days is going to be going retrograde. And this means that something has to be redone. Now, from a home standpoint, this, of course, could be something that there's physically needing to be fixed in the home, something you've already fixed and already dealt with. This also could be somebody returning to the house who used to live there. So like maybe kids are coming back from college, or maybe a kid was out for a while and now they need to come back for a while. So you may be dealing with this idea of something returning. This is also, though, if you've been thinking about moving in the past but you didn't do it, now those thoughts might be there again. So you might be thinking, is it right time to move? And there's some issues, of course. If you move during a Mercury retrograde, you can feel quite compelled on subsequent retrogrades to move. And so generally, we don't like to move during Mercury retrograde, but we can't always help it. So if you're in the process of a move or you're really thinking about a move, then you may have to go through with that and then just recognize that in the future, when we hit a retrograde time, you might be, thinking, it's time to pack up some boxes, when it may not be. When it comes to your money, you are pulling money from that moon that is in your house of relationships, and that, of course, is the moon that is doing our lunar eclipse. And so now we have uncovered a little bit more about what these relationship issues are. And so if you are owed money from a person, or if there is some inequities going on as a couple in how you are supporting each other, maybe one is feeling that they're bringing home all the money, the other one's maybe doing all the work, or some sort of thing where both parties are feeling that things are not fair. This moon is here to clear those up. Now, on the positive side, though, this moon is pulling energy to your house of money from other people, and that means the more people you meet, the more opportunities you have. And on an eclipse energy, you could do something that's bigger than usual, and that means, go ahead and direct message those influencers who you feel that you could do a collaboration with, and see if you get any answers, because this could start something that is very interesting in your life. When it comes to money from your business or from investments, you're going to be part of the trends. You're the third sign I'm doing, and so far everyone has felt like things are not so good out there in investment world, or maybe in the business world. So we are definitely seeing some weakness here. Yours is, the moon is making well, it's out of orb. It would have been making a sextile to that Saturn, but it is out of orb by a few minutes. And as I mentioned before, I'm very strict about my orbs because I find that if two planets are too wide, there's only the desire to make something happen without the ability to make it happen. And that's what you're doing right now. And so don't be overwhelmed by this desire. Just acknowledge the desire. Oh, I really wish I could get things going, but I can't right now. So I'm going to go work on something else. And that's your best use of this energy. When it comes to your money derived from career, now we are looking at a sesquiquadrant between Mars and Moon. Now, in all my research, in all my days, I have not had time to do the research necessary for these minor aspects. But because this one is exact, I thought I would mention it. A sesquiquadrant is interesting because it has qualities to say that something extraordinary could happen, but that is also so far out of your comfort zone that you can feel uncomfortable. And so this energy could be that someone may be offering you an opportunity to make some more money, but it is way outside of what you wanted to do. Maybe the hours are something you didn't want to work, or the duties are something that you feel is beyond you. So you may receive this offer. Minor aspects, though, are hard to activate, or it could be something quite fleeting that you heard about it, but it would have required you to do an application or talk to someone about it. And since it was outside your comfort zone, you didn't do that. So it was just this possibility of happening, but nothing really came of it. Now, when it comes to riskier investments, you're not doing an aspect between Moon and Venus this time. And so there is more energy here of just collecting information, but it's because you're not even doing an aspect, it's almost like the information that you're receiving is not what you want to hear. And so I'm feeling like either you're asking the wrong people, or this information is flying in the face of what you believe about this investment. And so maybe you need to let go of preconceived notions so that you can really digest this information that's coming to you. So you need to ask yourself, is this coming from a reliable source, or is this information, just like my second cousin thinks that it's crazy for me to want to do this type of business? So you need to weigh the information that you're getting. Okay, Cancer natives, you guys are doing this eclipse in your area of routines, health, work, how you work with others, who works for you. And so this is very much about looking at your processes of how you do things and your routines in general and seeing if these are beneficial for you. Also, of course, if you've been thinking that you should change diets or that you should get on some sort of exercise plan, the answer from the universe is a resounding yes. It is saying that you need to do something because eclipses are about change, and so this is suggesting that a change would be helpful. Now, remember that you are a spiritual person. You are already a person who is looking at information like astrology and maybe more. And so you may have already started changes like this. So this is not necessarily saying that the changes you've made are incorrect. It is just a general reminder to people that change is necessary. So if you've already begun these changes, congratulations, you're ahead of the curve. When it comes to your relationships, there is this very wide out of orb sextile between Moon and Saturn, and this is too far for me to say that it's an actual aspect. So there's much more of the desire to make something happen than to actually have it happen. And so you might be wishing to get into a new relationship or to further an existing one, and the timing isn't necessarily there. I mean, it might be there for you because, you're almost doing this aspect, but it's definitely not there for them. Or it's vice versa, it's not there for you, and they might be kind of coming to you saying, let's move this forward. So you need to be patient this time. Also, looking at pulling this person in more into your daily life and, maybe even taking the steps of seeing how you can work together in some aspect, like working on a financial project or working on a social project or something like that, because of that eclipse energy in your house of work. When it comes to home and family, you are pulling energy from that Venus, which is in your 12th house. And so that is an indicator that everything's going on with the family behind the scenes. And it's possible that you're out in the world and you're doing things, but most of your family wants to stay home. It is also possible that everybody has split up and they're doing their own things and you're not coming together as much as you were before. So when it comes to your family, everything's just moving along as it should, and you don't really need to do anything about it right now. In fact, because there's no aspect between Moon and Venus, you can't really do anything about it. So when it comes to your money, you're pulling money from that sun in the 12th house, and that does mean that you have to kind of let go and let the universe take care of things. This can mean that maybe you can move things forward financially by doing a little feng shui or lighting a candle or saying a prayer or things like that, but you do have to let go of things, especially things that are outside your control. And that sometimes can be many things in a person's life. So this also does say that if you are doing money-making activities where you want something to go out into the world in a bigger sense, you do have an opportunity to do that. Again, this is not in your control, so that doesn't mean throwing more money at an advertising campaign, but it does say go ahead and release the advertising campaign. Yes, I know Mercury is going to go retrograde, and sometimes that can cause problems with the actual launch of things, or that some of the copy is not correct, so just double check all of those factors. But doing an advertising campaign during Mercury retrograde actually can bring you double, where people will come to you and bring other people with them, or a person will come back to you. And so that is that repetition part of the retrograde. So there can be some benefits. So when it comes to money from your investments or from your business, you got some interesting energy going on. Now, Jupiter has left your house of investments, so you may see some decline, but because you're probably in it for the long haul with Saturn there, this isn't much of a reason for concern. You also do have a semi-sextile going on between the Sun and Uranus, which again says you're slightly irritated, but through some adjustments you can do well. So I do expect you to do okay this time, which by the way, you are the first sign I have said that to. The other 3 signs I have recorded already did not get that good news. So, but this does mean there is a little bit of work because the semi-sextile is not that comfortable in energy. So I see the potential for making more, but it is when you put in the effort. Now, when it comes to money derived from career, even though the Sun and Venus are in the same sign, they are in the 12th house, and so things are very much out of your control. And this means that you can ask for a raise, but the boss might say, well, it's some other supervisor who has to make that decision, or we have to wait for the company meeting or something. So this is, you can plant a seed, but you can't stand over the seed to make it grow. And so planting a seed at this time is okay because Venus and Sun are in the same sign, but it may take a while for this to germinate and certainly a while before you can harvest. Now, when it comes to riskier investments, and this is the investments that take a lot of time, effort, or money to get going, now you definitely do not have the aspects that we're looking for normally. And this flies in the face of that Mars in your own sign of Cancer, which could be giving you a lot of confidence and a lot of energy to move forward at a time where things are not necessarily lining up. The Sun is not making an aspect to Pluto. The Sun is not making an aspect to Mars. And so I want you to be cautious at this time because the energies are out of sync for you. And so you want to just take a breath, see where the markets are going, see if some new information is coming to you. And being that these energies are in the 12th house, maybe they come as intuition or a dream or some sort of, message from the universe. So just be patient and wait, even though I can see you're like a racehorse, in the gate, ready for that gate to go up. You do have to just breathe and relax for a little bit. Okay, Leo natives, you guys are doing this eclipse energy in your area of children, fertility, creativity, and risky investments. And so starting with the kids, there could be some changes going on with your children, and that can be something as minor as them moving back home after college, or that something else is going on with them. Maybe you're getting their grades and you're not happy with them. The grades, not necessarily the kids. The kids are just, stressing you out a little bit because you have the whole summer ahead and you don't know what activities they're going to be able to do. This is also about fertility, and so some changes could be necessary. If you want to get pregnant, you might need to find some professional to help you or make some other big change. When it comes to your creativity, now, if you would look for a breakthrough and try to get over, your hesitation about creating or your fear of what other people would say, it's time to go through that doorway. And we'll talk about the risky investments in a moment. When it comes to relationships, Jupiter's now left that house, but that's okay because you have a semi-sextile going on between Sun and Uranus, which, while not the most comfortable aspect, is still an aspect. So we do see some really good prospects for you meeting somebody new or moving things forward with your current relationship. And that is also due to the fact that now Jupiter is in your house of intimacy. And so Jupiter is expanding your ability to learn how to reach your partner on a deeper level, how to trust them more. It brings out, things that might have been secret. It allows you to, test the honesty of the relationship itself. So there's a lot of beneficial things that the few weeks of Jupiter being in this house will bring you. When it comes to home and family, you are pulling energy from that Pluto and Mars doing that 6-12. And so there's an awful lot of energy around what are the routines at home, what are the processes, who's doing the laundry, who's doing the dishes. And then also this idea of that Mars, and the 12th is almost a feeling of loneliness, like the family has scattered into the four winds. Everybody's going off to do whatever they want to do, and you're sitting there thinking, hey, I'm all by myself. When did that happen? But you could use this alone time to your benefit by working on some projects or doing some creative work or things like that. So there are some benefits to this, but you might be wondering, where did everybody go? So we have good news on the money front. You are pulling money from that Mercury up in your house of money derived from career. I love to see the ruler of a money house in a money house, so I think that you are going to be making more money than usual. This is also going to be benefited by the Mercury going retrograde, which will be in this house. And so that means that even if there are some delays in you getting more money, that money is still winging its way to you, albeit slowly. So there are some really great possibilities for you financially during this period. Now, when it comes to your money derived from investments and from passive income sources or from your business or a family business, you are actually doing the best energy I've seen so far in this video, and that is that the Mercury is making a square to the Neptune, plus Jupiter has gone into that house. So it is that you're suddenly seeing some money-making opportunities, or your business is starting to take off. Now, it's interesting because the other signs I was looking at was showing less confidence in the economy or in their investments. And so you might be in a business that actually does better when things are not as certain. So, and that's great because then at least somebody's making money, and I'm glad it's you. So, but this energy does say that there's some opportunities to make more money than usual. So you definitely want to be taking action, and that is typified by that Mercury square Neptune. Now, when it comes to money derived from career, you have an excellent house with Sun, North Node, Mercury, and Venus in that house, and the Mercury will go retrograde. And again, that Mercury retrograde doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It could mean that you're getting sales from a place that you've gotten before, or you have another opportunity for a bonus or some other award at work, or that you could be getting another job like you had applied and didn't hear from them, and now they're calling you in for the interview or something like that. So the energy around your career, your income from career, is quite good right now. Now, the challenging energy is in your area of money derived from risky investments. That's where we see the moon, and the moon is always a place where we are kind of worried or concerned. Plus, this is a lunar eclipse, so that moon is definitely going through some changes. There's no aspect going on between Mercury and Jupiter. So putting all of that together, it says that risky investments are super risky right now. You do need to be quite cautious because it is very easy for you to get caught up in the enthusiasm of something. You know how fire energy just can get so excited and sign on the dotted line before you really see what you are signing. So I if nothing else, like, just set the pen down and walk away from the table, because this energy is not showing up as good for you right now. So even if you were thinking about selling something or buying something, just be super, super cautious. Okay, Virgo natives, you guys are doing this eclipse in your 4th house right at the base of your chart. And of course, this means changes around home, family, but also the very foundations in which you're basing your life. So this is the things that you learned in childhood, the rules that you accepted, the concepts that you adopted. All of those things are what are being challenged right now. And so this might be that you realize that there's a family pattern going on, or that you have recognized that you have adopted some rules, maybe from early childhood teachings, maybe from a religion or education or something. And now you are looking at those things and saying, is this really what I need in my life right now? Now, this doesn't mean to say that you are going to just toss out all the things from your family or from your ancestors or things like that. This is about being mindful and choosing what has value for you now and what maybe needs to either be released or it needs to be modified. There is the idea that, you know, we're constantly growing, and so attitudes that we might have had years ago, they can evolve, they can get better, improve as you get new information, as you gain more experience. Now, of course, on a practical side, this could mean that you're receiving signs that it's time to move, or you're already in the process of moving. Now, if you have already set the move in motion, some of it may still happen during Mercury retrograde, and, you know, if there's paperwork to be signed and things like that, then always make a second copy. Always realize that somebody's going to lose something, because with Mercury retrograde, paperwork can go a little awry. But it doesn't necessarily mean that this is a bad thing. Sometimes when you move on Mercury retrograde, what can happen is that you feel quite compelled to move again as the next retrograde or a future retrograde happens. So just be aware of this. If you have already signed the lease or already purchased the property and you're just moving things in, then the retrograde just says to be careful, because things could get broken, things that would need to be replaced or something like that. So, but otherwise, the biggest thing that can happen if you're actually moving on the Mercury retrograde is that you'll get all the furniture in place and then want to switch it up. And so that's not usually so difficult. So when we look at your relationships, you are doing that Jupiter that is brand new in Pisces. Of course, that's just going to be for a few weeks, and then it's going to go back into Aquarius. But for now, it's giving you a lot of luck, and it's expanding your house of relationships. So that's fantastic. It is also the thing that's going to bring you people from all different walks of life. So you're going to be meeting people that are different than you've met before, and so this could challenge some of those belief systems that we were just talking about. Now, I think that this Jupiter is bringing you enough luck that you can meet somebody. Currently, the moon is not making an aspect to Neptune. However, the co-ruler of Pisces is Jupiter, and not only is Jupiter making that square with the moon, but the moon is in Sagittarius, which rules Jupiter. So you see there's all of these other connections going on. So I think you're going to have really good luck if you're looking for love, if you want to move a relationship forward, or if you want to deepen your current relationship. So we already spoke quite a bit about your home life, but the thing to add is that it is ruled by that Jupiter, which is now in Pisces. And so this could mean that somebody is coming back home, that maybe you have adult children who are coming back into the house. This could mean that, you're having a roommate situation where maybe you've lived in alone for a while, or you and your sweetheart are getting together to move in together. I like the energy that I'm seeing, again, because of that moon in Sagittarius and the aspect between the moon and Jupiter. So I think that things are going to go pretty well at home. When we look at your finances, you are pulling energy from that Venus at the top of your chart in your house of career. This means that you could receive some sort of recognition at your job, maybe be singled out by a supervisor for doing some good work, or perhaps a customer writes a great testimonial about the service you gave. This is also really beneficial if you are looking for another job, because you have a great career house this time with the Sun, North Node, Venus, and Mercury in that house. So I really feel like this is the time, if you're looking for a new job, to consider it. Now, back to that Mercury retrograde thing that I was talking about. Mercury is going to go retrograde in just a few days. And so the difficulty about starting a new job during Mercury retrograde is that you can feel like you've made a move in as a mistake, or you could or maybe they will think that they're rethinking the position, and maybe they might eliminate the position, or there can be real difficulties starting a new job on the retrograde. So if it's at all possible, see if you can actually officially start outside the retrograde period. And if you don't know, Mercury will be retrograde from May 29th to June 22nd. So usually if you're just starting your interview process now, then it makes sense, that you'll give 2 weeks notice, and it takes them a little while to get all the paperwork done. It's pretty easy to fall outside that retrograde period. If you do feel that it's necessary for you to start the job during Mercury retrograde, then you do want to take precautions to make sure all the paperwork is in place, that nobody's lost something, if your paycheck's late, to really say something right away and be understanding about it. It's not like they're intending to lose your paycheck, but it is that some sort of data wasn't entered properly, or that some paperwork has been misfiled. And so you just want to really be aware of those sort of things. Now, when it comes to money that comes from your own business, or from a family business, or royalties, residuals, that sort of thing, investments, you're doing currently a little semi-sextile between Venus and Mars, and that means that there's money coming in, but for some reason you're not entirely happy with it. So if you own a business, it could be that some customers are paying you, but they're nickel and diming you. Nickel and diming you, and so you're just feeling a little irritated by it. Perhaps that returns are a little smaller than you were expected, although an aspect is still an aspect. So I do see you making more money than usual, but there's some point where you're having to make some sort of adjustments, or maybe you're just not doing work that you enjoy as much to create these sources of income. Now, when it comes to money derived from career, you do have the Mars going through this house, and so I do see you actively working on making more money, or establishing a source of income through working for somebody else. So that's all very good. The moon is not making an aspect with Venus, and so it could be that you're not paid within this 2-week period, or it's not that you're not going to get paid, but that you won't get paid the additional. So I see that your money is just about the same or just slightly more than usual, but it's not the bigger money that you're going to receive later. And when it comes to money that comes from risky investments, and these are the bigger things that you're working really hard to make happen, like selling your art or your music or things like that, Venus is not making an aspect with Saturn. And Saturn, of course, is still going through your 6th house of hard work. So you're still in that sort of, seed tending. You're not quite to harvest time yet. So there's definitely a lot of work still happening. Now, with the Venus elevated right now, that does mean that you can do more promotion, marketing, or let other people know what you're up to, and you could gather in some resources. But for actually grabbing some profits right now or having a big success, that's not quite happening yet. Okay, Libra natives, you guys are doing this eclipse in your house of communication, which is the thing that's very near and dear to my heart right now, because myself and another astrologer are working on a great program about how to communicate and about the different signs, and I'm really excited about it, and I'll be making some announcements about that soon. But in the meantime, you're doing this eclipse in your area of communication, transportation, as well as education. So this is really about, what you are teaching, writing, publishing, putting out there into the world, but also how you're speaking to yourself. And so with this eclipse, it could be that you're back into some old habits of negative self-talk, or that you're finding some communication issues with some people you've had communication issues with in the past. And so there needs to be an awareness of that. Now, additionally, this can represent paperwork, and so with Mercury retrograde coming up, which can foul up paperwork anyway, you do want to really keep an eye on what you're sending out there. Make sure that things have a signature on them when they're supposed to, or initialed where they're supposed to, that you're keeping a copy when you need to. Also check your backup systems, make sure that they are backing things up properly, so that if there's some problems in the future, that you know that you're going to be fine. When it comes to relationships, you do have an aspect, but it's a semi-sextile, and the semi-sextile does indicate that things are not going as smoothly as you like, but they are still, there's still a connection. So that means that you can meet new people. If you're looking for love, you can further a current relationship, but you're going to have to you're going to have to do more of the work perhaps than you want to, because you are represented by the Venus, they're represented by the Mars, and so it's like the Venus is a little bit past the Mars, and the Mars can't catch the Venus, so it's almost like you have to turn around and say, all right, I'm going to take this action, even if you've been taking the action the whole time. So in a practical sense, that means that you have to do more of the calling, or more of the texting, or you have to pick the restaurant, or things like that. And maybe that is irritating to you right now, but that's the aspect. It is one that is slightly irritating. When it comes to home and family, you're pulling energy from that Saturn the 5th, of course, because you've been doing that and will do that for a long time. And, this time I want to emphasize that Saturn does rule, or that Saturn is going through the house of risky ventures, and also being bold and taking bold action. And so this time, maybe consider how, you are with the family. Do you walk on eggshells with them? Do you really state who you are? And what kind of play are you doing together? Maybe in the past you used to do like game night, but now everybody's in their little corner with their own devices. Or maybe it's just time to play the games that the other members of the family want to play, even if those aren't your favorite video games or board games or something like that. So there is this ability to connect through games. Now, right now, there's no aspect going on between Venus and Saturn, and so you might be so busy working on other things that this is not a high priority. But if you do want to make it a priority, see how, where you can have fun together again. When it comes to your money, you are pulling money from that Pluto, of course, in the 4th house still. I think that's going to be going on until 2023, and it does give you some ability with real estate, family businesses, and Anything where a family member, even an ancestor, had an ability, and you can tap into that. But you're also pulling money from that Mars in your 10th house, and that means career. And so there is really some big opportunities right now for you in the area of career, and that is to let others know what you do, let others know your skill set, post your resume, or even just talk about your accomplishments on a site like LinkedIn, so that even if you're not actually looking for a job, somebody who is looking for someone with your skill set could find you. When it comes to income from business or from a family business or things like dividends or stocks or investments and things like that, Venus is making an inconjunct to that Pluto and a semi-sextile to Mars. And so that's really good news. You're doing two aspects. The bad news is they're not that fun aspects. And that means that to make the money, you have to do the things that you don't really enjoy doing. So sometimes people, when they're doing a business, really like to be involved in the parts that they like to do, but neglect the parts that they don't like to do. And this would say, go do the parts you don't like to do. And that could be anything from, connecting with the clients who you've had in the past, or, getting down into the weeds and doing the paperwork, or really learning how to do your own website or things like that. So as you're doing these aspects, you can make much more money than usual, but you have to go in and basically do the dirty job or the job that you don't like doing, and that's what's going to bring you the money. Now, when it comes to money derived from career, even though that Mars is going through that house of career, which I think is very good for you promoting yourself, etc., the Sun is not making an aspect to Mars or Pluto. And so that does mean that you're kind of like ships in the night. You're making about the same as usual. There may even be some promises about that, or maybe they're saying to you, if you get this degree, or you get this paperwork done, or you get this certification, or you get this license or something, then I can pay you more, but right now I can't. And it also could be that they are waiting for some sort of government funding. Let me try that again. Maybe it is because they are waiting for some government funding, and then they're going to be able to give you more hours or give you a raise or something like that. So everything's a little bit off right now. And so you're not really going to receive more than usual over the next 2 weeks. When it comes to risky investments, you still have, of course, Saturn going through there. That does mean hard work is necessary to get something going. It is ruled by that Uranus, which is in a money house. That's really great. So you're probably talking to people about funding, and you've probably been doing it a while, because Uranus is not a fast planet. The trouble is right now that Mars and Pluto are not making an aspect to Saturn or Uranus, and so everything is a disconnect right now. The timing is off. You can't get a hold of the banker, or, they say, oh, we've given out all the money that we have and you'll have to come to us the next cycle, or something you were working on in the past now expires and you have to redo it, or worse, Mercury retrograde and makes you redo it anyway. So this is more of a time where you're just exploring future funding options rather than actually doing the applications. You want to wait until Mars lines up in a more favorable manner with either Uranus or Saturn, or both, and that will happen, but right now it's not happening. Okay, Scorpio natives, you guys are doing this eclipse in your house of money. Also possessions and self-worth, your sense of deserving. And so that's what's being called into question. That's the thing that needs to change. And so the universe is suggesting that maybe you look at your belief systems around money and your belief systems around deserving. And it is the idea that you don't necessarily have to do things to be worthy of the money that you want to make, but you do need to believe that you do deserve it. And so this is about a shift to an awareness of the abundance of the universe, the abundance of I mean, even what's on this planet. And even though things are not distributed fairly, there is actually enough for everyone. And so thinking about things in a new way, maybe through doing a gratitude journal or a meditation or visualization, can help you through this block. Because this moon in your second house says that you are gaining knowledge about how to attract money to you, how to manifest. So it's really good to work on this at this time. Of course, this is the full moon energy, and so you have a fabulous 8th house, which could bring you resources from many people. And so this is not just looking at the conventional resources, but also looking at spiritual sources where people have talked about the philosophy of making money. There's this book called the Prosperity, I think it's called the Prosperity Bible. But all it is just a lot of classic prosperity books, all, like Think and Grow Rich and all of those types of books, all bound together in one book. And, of course you're thinking, wow, that's a really big book and I don't know if I want to read it. But, even just opening up a book like that, reading a chapter or reading a page and then meditating on that. Of course, there's some amazing people on YouTube, who talk about making money, everything from that Graham Steffens out there to... When it comes to relationships, of course, the 8th house being your house of intimacy is chock full of planets, so you could get some real happy moments, if you know what I mean. Venus is making an inconjunct to Pluto, however, and that does mean, well, first, it is an aspect, so that's great. That means you can get together, but there is some problem, and that can be that, you're talking, but your schedules are keeping you apart, or that you are together, but one of you is ready to move forward, the other one's not. So there are some adjustments, but because it's an aspect, you can make the adjustments. So be aware of what the other person is asking, and if they're on board, you can say, hey, we're doing an inconjunct, let's make some adjustments. And if they're not, then you're probably going to have to do the lion's share of those adjustments. But if they are asking you to change something, consider whether this is something that was in line with your goals and aspirations anyway, and then move towards that. When it comes to home and family, of course, you have the Saturn that you're doing, as well as that co-ruler Uranus. And these guys, they're in the same houses. They've been in for a while because they don't move that fast. And so a lot of this energy is to explore every single aspect of the house that they're traveling through. So Saturn is traveling through your house of ancestors as well as home. It is saying, look at the foundations of things and where you come from. What are the things from your ancestors that you're bringing forward? What are the things that you're letting go? This Saturn is also in this place of endings, and so that's another thing to consider is what should be finished or what should be completed, and looking around the house and saying, all right, I no longer need these items, or I tend to keep acquiring this type of item, and I'm going to stop buying this type of item and just use what I have. Now, when it comes to your money, you have some interesting stuff going on because, first of all, as we already mentioned, you are doing the eclipse in this house of money. And so usually when there's an eclipse, it says, please pay attention to your money. It is that, think of it as, you could be out in the ocean being hit by waves, or you could be the world-class surfer who has the surfboard, who is looking forward to the waves coming. So this is that if you have not paid a lot of attention to your finances, you don't do a written budget and you don't write down what you spend, maybe it's time to start, because this eclipse is trying to get your attention. Now, your second house is pulling money from Jupiter that has just gone into a new sign. So just the act of Jupiter changing signs could bring your awareness to that also. But Jupiter has gone into Pisces, and Pisces is known for not being aware. And so you may be feeling like you're getting lulled into a sense of complacency here. And so I think that's why you're currently doing this eclipse tips there to say, don't be complacent. Don't allow other people to make all the decisions for you, but be aware of your finances, because this is what you need to survive on this planet. Now, as I mentioned before, you have an amazing 8th house going on, and so you're going to find lots of things to invest in. You're going to find lots of different opportunities for your business and all that. This could be because of some fluctuations in the market is causing you to pay attention to what the market is doing. And if the market does start dropping, as it might, then you do want to be cautious now, because just because it has your attention doesn't mean you need to go forward. And this is especially true because even though you have all of these nice planets in the 8th house, you do not have an aspect between Jupiter and Mercury. Or if you do, it is too wide, because I like 7 degrees, and this is actually, 4 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes past the 7-degree mark, and it's out of sign, and Jupiter, being newly minted in this sign, is still finding its way. It hasn't been in Pisces for 12 years. So there's a lot going on here that's going to make your judgment not really clear. And so if you are hearing this kind of siren song, or all your friends are saying you got to jump into the market now, I still want you to wait, because the aspects here aren't strong enough to be making a profit. Now, when it comes to money derived from career, of course, the aspect is the same, but the difficulty is that there's no planets in that 11th house. And so this is more about receiving promises, especially during the retrograde, of that something's going to come through for you, but you're waiting, and it's not. And so while the aspect has not lined up yet, so it's too early to speak about this, there will come a time over the next few weeks or months where you will be able to speak to maybe a supervisor, or the hiring manager, or somebody like that, to get your raise to go through, or get more hours, or switch positions, or things like that. So again, the timing's not quite right, and because 2 of your money houses are ruled by Mercury, which will be going retrograde, I know you're quite used to the gyrations of finances. You are better at this than most people. You've got a good surfboard to ride the waves. That's fantastic, but it doesn't mean that you want to go full on into something when you could just stand aside and wait for the waters to calm down. Now, probably the most interesting house for you is that house of risky investments, and that, of course, would be anything from the cryptocurrencies to actually any type of currency trading could be considered unusual or risky. It's just not the normal thing people do. So, or big real estate purchases, especially if you're flipping properties or things like that. And I say it's interesting now because Jupiter has gone into a new sign, and Jupiter co-rules that house. Neptune, of course, rules it. And now those two are in the same sign, in the same house. And so currently, there is this idea that they are talking to each other, but it is a communication that is still getting, its little baby steps in, because Jupiter is just brand new in this sign. And so you're receiving some hints of something to come. You're receiving, maybe a little interest in someone wanting to buy your business, or that you might find something that you're considering buying. It's not quite time yet, so just keep your eyes open. You may get something that tells you to move forward during this period. However, with Mercury retrograde, I would say you just want to wait for anything that's this long term, or this big. It's going to be there in a few weeks. So you might as well wait until Mercury has gone direct. Okay, Sagittarius natives, of course, this is your eclipse. This is the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, the last one of this series, which means we will not have another lunar eclipse in Sagittarius for about 9 years. So this is a pretty big deal. In fact, you could probably think back 9 years ago and ask yourself what you were working on and what you were doing, and get some idea of what's going on with this eclipse. So being that this eclipse is in Sagittarius, it says, what are you going to change about yourself? And that if you looked at yourself even from a year ago, you would see how much you've already changed, and then it's likely you're going to change that much or more over the next 6 months and certainly over the next year. Now, there will be another Sagittarius eclipse, just not a lunar one. There will be a solar eclipse in Sagittarius in December. I had to check that. Yes, in December. And so there is going to be more Sagittarius energy, and we'll talk about it, of course, around that time. But the lunar eclipse is more about you feeling emotionally blocked from doing something because mundane activities are just taking over your life. So this could be about what do you want to eliminate or what do you want to delegate. As you look across the chart, of course, you can see the Sun, North Node, Venus, and Mercury all in your 7th house. What a fabulous 7th house that is. And so it does give you some opportunities to find other people who could shoulder some of the burden that you're going through. With the eclipse in your 1st house, this also means you might change your physical appearance, you might change your hair color or get a tattoo or something, one that's really noticeable. You might change your look in some way, and so you could also change your body size, start working out, or things like that. Of course, some of these things won't happen over the 2-week period, but an eclipse usually unfolds over a 6-month period. When it comes to relationships, I already said you have an amazing house of relationships. Now, Jupiter is not making an aspect with Mercury right now, so some of the timing is off, and that could be because you're doing an eclipse. And so that means that there are some changes in your life, and so you might be meeting somebody new, which could really cause some issues with your current relationship. Or that you're meeting someone new, but you had just decided that you were going to stay permanently single, or something like that. So there are some challenges that you're dealing with. And so the fact that you don't have an aspect going on, I think gives you the time to work things out. You have enough planets in the 7th house that it's not a matter that they're going to, get bored and run away, or that they are, that you're going to say something wrong and they're going to run away, because there's enough opportunities there that either you're going to get multiple chances with the same person, or you're going to get multiple people who have a similar soul path, and so therefore a connection with you. So I think that if you can be patient with yourself and not feel like you have to connect with this other person, that would be good. I think that will help the fact that there's no aspect going on. And so, you can just say, you know what, the timing will work out in a couple weeks. I don't have to push it right now. So when we look at home and family, now you have Jupiter in this house, and that brings a level of luck and spirituality to this house. It's going to be there until July, and then it's going to go back into your 3rd house. And so as it crosses back and forth, there might be some feelings of it's time to move, or make some big changes to the house. You might be bringing spiritual practices into the house, deciding to set up an altar or a spirit's hearth. You can look at some of my feng shui videos about, different things that you can do to increase the energy, the positive energy, like space clearing and putting up crystals and bells and things like that, so that you have, different lights and different sounds and things like that that really make the house a sacred place. So I think that this Jupiter transit for you is going to feel very nice. The one thing about the Jupiter transit also, though, is it can make the house feel too small. So you might be feeling like you want a bigger world, and so that could be that you spend more time outside, maybe in the yard, or that you're getting in your car and going car camping somewhere, just so that you recognize that home could be in many places. You don't have to be in one little building, you don't have to be in one little room, that you do have the whole world that can be your home. When it comes to money, you are pulling money from that Saturn in your house of communication. And so communication is something I've been thinking a lot about, and myself and another astrologer are working on a project for communication, which talks about where your Mercury is and how you can communicate with people of other signs, and so you can get better just get better at communication. And so that's one of the things that the Saturn is doing. In being that it's also in your house of transportation, you may be thinking about your vehicle or how you get around town, and you might be looking at whether this is the best way to do that. When it comes to your money from passive income sources, investments, or your own business, Mars, of course, is going through that house, so that is putting a lot of energy into that area. That means you can discover new sources of revenue, you can discover new passive income sources, and you may have been sitting on the same investments for a long time, and now you're feeling like you're motivated to change them. But the interesting thing is Saturn is not making an aspect with the moon, and that's because, one, of course, I give a really strict 7-degree orb, and so that to me says that this is too far. I mean, when you look at it mathematically, what are we doing? We have a difference of just 5 minutes. 5 minutes is not very much, so you might say, oh, but that's so close. But because it's just over that 7 degrees, actually, anytime we hit the 7 degree, I see more of a desire to have it happen than actually an ability to make it happen. So I want you to be cautious about your investing and things like that. I know the market might be getting a little volatile because I have not seen a lot of charts as I'm doing this that are saying, this is going to be easy. A lot of the charts show a mismatch, just like yours does. So I think that you need to be quite cautious, make sure you're getting the good information. And because the eclipse is part of this whole thing, I think you have to be extra careful because the eclipse says that you're changing. And as you're doing that, things that you are thinking are going to not change over a long period of time, this has done well in the past, so it should do well in the future. Those things could change as well. When it comes to money derived from career, you are pulling energy from that Venus, but the Venus is not making an aspect to Saturn. So you're not making as much as usual, or you're just making the same, but barely. And that could be because with that Venus in the 7th house, maybe something or someone is pulling you away from the job, so you're working less hours, or that you're on vacation, which would be very nice, or that maybe something else is coming in, so there is some sort of disruption going on. This is, of course, a temporary aspect. It's not going to always be this way, but this is not a good time to ask for a raise. It's not a good time even really to try to get those extra hours. Instead, put your time and energy into something else. Now, when it comes to riskier investments, that would be, the things that take a lot of time, energy, or money to get going, like a YouTube channel. So you are pulling energy from that Mars in your 8th house, which does say that you can get funding. That is pretty good. Now, we have a very wide 7-degree aspect between Saturn and Mars, and you know how I feel about that. That means that there's more of a desire to make it happen than actually getting it to happen. But it is a little closer than the other aspect you were doing, so I'm going to say that there is a chance here. Now, with that Mars in the 8th house, the 8th house being more where other people are contributing, this is resources from other people. This might be the time to put up your Patreon account or to do some crowdfunding, a GoFundMe account, Kickstarter, or something like that, where there's a lot of people coming together to fund what it is that you want. So that's the direction I would go. I would certainly not put a lot of money into this. It's understandable if you're putting some time into this because Mars is involved, but try to even limit that, give yourself a time limit so you don't go overboard on it, because right now it's not lining up to bring you huge success at the moment, but you could get the infrastructure of it in place and then do the promotion later. Okay, Capricorn natives, you guys are doing this eclipse in your 12th house, and this means that this is more about you letting go of some inclinations that you have versus issues that are right in the forefront. So in other words, there's, most Capricorn energy is about being practical, working hard, becoming an expert at something. So, it's ruled by Saturn, and a lot of people go, Saturn, it's so difficult. But Saturn is also very useful. Saturn is the thing that causes you to want to climb the mountain and succeed at it. And so Saturn gives you the wherewithal to do that. But the previous sign of Sagittarius, and where this eclipse is this more, foolhardy jump, leap into the fray sort of energy. And that's the thing where you as a Capricorn are actually here to say, is that the best idea? So your inclination is to leap and to not do the preparation, to just jump forward and say, I'll wing it. But because you're Capricorn, this is the time to say, that's the feeling I want to do, but I am going to do some preparation. In fact, it is necessary for you to do the preparation ahead of time, so that when you do have to wing parts of it, you will only have to do some of that. You won't have to wing the whole thing. Winging the whole thing, that sounds so silly, but what I'm trying to say is that your soul, your deep down desire is to just throw caution to the wind. But as a Capricorn or Capricorn rising, you are supposed to be cautious. You are supposed to be aware of the challenges ahead. So what this eclipse is doing is it's really spurring you on. It's like somebody whispering in your ear, like, go for it, go for it, go for it. But it's really time for you to hang back and say, let me do my due diligence. Let me look things over before I jump in. When it comes to relationships, you do have Mars going through your house of relationships, which means you are probably putting more energy into looking for somebody new or getting your current relationship to move forward, etc. So, but you're not doing an aspect between Moon and Saturn right now, and this means that the timing is off. And that can mean that you make a call, but they don't answer, or they call you, but you're not able to answer the phone, or you can't get together, you're in different locations, or things like that. And so with all of the stuff going on, especially with the eclipse, they might be going through a lot of stuff in their life. And so you do want to be understanding. You also need to fight that urgency, that feeling to say, I'm just going to call them a couple of times and say, why aren't you responding to me? When in actuality, you need to take a more measured approach. When it comes to home and family, you are pulling energy from that Mars in the 7th house, which does mean that maybe people are coming over to visit. Maybe you're going to other people's houses. Now that things are opening up a little bit more, there's more contact with other people, and that Mars in Cancer loves to cook and, have banquets or potlucks or all kinds of things. And so I do think you're going to have a happy time. When it comes to your money, of course, you are pulling money from that Uranus in your house of risk-taking. We've talked about that many times, as well as the co-ruler Saturn, which is going through your 2nd house. And the combination of these two are so interesting, especially now, with Saturn still in Aquarius, ruled by that Uranus in Taurus. And so there is this kind of, extra connection between them. Well, not from the Taurus part, but from the Aquarius part. And so what this means is it's very important to look at what is traditional about how you handle money and what is the more new or evolved way that you're handling money. And weighing which one is best in each situation. You might be quite traditional, maybe still using cash, maybe putting things in envelopes or in little jars or things like that, but then also keeping a spreadsheet or have an app to track your expenses. So looking at how you're doing your money in the new ways and the traditional ways and seeing which of those is beneficial. That's what's important this time. So, because that also brings your money to the forefront to say, am I thinking about this? Because, with that eclipse happening in your 12th house, you can act so impulsively or instinctually that can affect your spending. And so this is why you want to be mindful of your money this time. When it comes to money from business or passive income sources, things like royalties or dividends or affiliate marketing or network marketing money, all of those things, the sun is making a wide semi-sextile to Uranus, and so there's a possibility of making some extra money this time, but it comes through things you don't necessarily really like to do. And that could be that, if you're doing network marketing, maybe you have to be contacting people more often, and maybe you're getting a lot of pushback, and so you have to find that balance between, informing and annoying. So, the same goes with your investments. How often should you look at them? Are you better off ignoring them for a time so that you don't get all caught up in the fluctuations? Or is it better for you to watch the gyrations of the market so that you can get a feel for it? So this is a time where whatever you normally do, and that's fine, but look at the stuff that you tend to shy away from and see whether you should be doing that. When it comes to money derived from career, now we do have a disconnect because there's no aspect between Pluto and Mars with Saturn and Uranus. And so therefore, you're not really in harmony right now with making more money. So I figure you're going to make about the usual amount of money because you do still have that Mars going through the 7th house, which means that the more people you talk to, the more money you're going to make. And so there is this energy that at least the Mars is no longer hidden, which it was a month or two ago. So the Mars is visible, and technically the Moon is as well. Even though it's not visible to you, the 12th house is visible to everyone else because it's above the horizon. And so you do have that energy that you could pull in money. So I think you're making about the same as usual, maybe not much more this time. And when it comes to risky investments and things like that, you still have to be cautious because Uranus is still and will for a long time be traveling through your house of risky investments, which means you have definitely the interest in doing these things like NFTs and Bitcoin and Dogecoin and all this other stuff. Yes, there's definitely the interest. Unfortunately, you're not doing an aspect this time, so be quite cautious. The ruler of your house of risky investments is in the house of hard work and routines and things like that. So let's say you're interested in Bitcoin. Well, this would be to start reading articles about how it's mined and what the different companies are that sell it. Also considering that you want to put it into your daily routine, that you're checking the prices every day and things like that. So get the routines in place, but be cautious about taking big steps forward because you're not doing an aspect. Okay, Aquarius natives, you guys are doing this eclipse in your area of the future. Okay, I made that sound too ominous. You're doing it in your area of the future, which does mean that you want to look at your plans for the future and see if you keep recycling the same goals over and over, but not really doing anything about it. And that is that you have, something that's big and huge, and that's going to take a lot of steps to get there, but you're not even taking those small steps. Or perhaps you need to look at the things that you've put for your future and see if you're still interested in those things. If you had, learning a foreign language, do you really have people that you want to talk to in that language? Or is it just something that you've written down on your list of goals for all, years and years, and so it keeps popping up on your goal list? Now, this house, of course, is also friendships as well as the community. And so there is this energy of now things are opening up, but with the eclipse there, maybe you're wondering whether you want to get involved with community. Maybe you're wondering, is it going to be safe out there? And so with the eclipse energy, it does say to take precautions. And those don't necessarily need to be a specific thing that everybody's doing, but something that you are choosing to do. And that could mean that you only go to certain types of community meetings, or that you go taking extra precautions when you do. Or that, if it's a certain size group, you don't go, and if it's smaller than that, you do go. What are your rules about this? When it comes to friendships with an eclipse, it could mean that some of your friends are going through major changes and they need your advice, or that you're asking friends for advice about the changes that are happening in your life. When it comes to relationships, you do have the sun in the 5th house, and the 5th house is about fun and romance and playing and all of that. So that's really good. It's making a semi-sextile with Uranus, and it's wide, so that's not as great. I mean, it's still kind of great because it's making an aspect, but it's an irritating one, which means that you might be attracting a lot of love, attention, but it's not necessarily from the people that you want. And so this might be a person who's not necessarily your type, or someone that you hadn't considered going out with before. And so, accept the compliment, but, you still have to be discerning about who you go out with. If you're already in a love relationship, this could mean that you want to have more fun, but they're very busy, or vice versa. But there is a way to compromise here, because there is an aspect. It's just a wide one, so it just takes real conscious effort. Now, when it comes to home and family, you're not doing an aspect between Uranus and Venus. However, of course, Uranus is going through your 4th house, so you're doing a lot of energy in this area. Now, because the Venus is in the house of fun and kids, it could be that somebody is moving back home, or that, a roommate, you want them to move out, but they can't quite move out yet. Perhaps there's also things going on in the neighborhood, like construction or things like that. Stuff you don't really have control over because there's no aspect going on. So this is more, because of the eclipse, I think this is more about you deciding what's really a rule for you, what though has evolved into maybe something that used to be a rule, but you don't mind it anymore. So this is more about, where you stand, and then expressing how you feel, and then stepping back and just letting things happen. Because you don't have an aspect, you're not really able to control things in this area over the next couple of weeks. Now, when it comes to your money, this is the good news. Jupiter now is in your house of money. That's fantastic, because Jupiter is luck and expansion and all of that. The downside of Jupiter is that can make you just lucky enough that you have just enough to get by, but it can cause you to not be so interested in accumulating money. Now, your 2nd house is ruled both by that Jupiter and the Neptune, and are both in Pisces. And so your best bet is to start to incorporate spiritual methods of aligning yourself with the vibration of money, so that more money can come to you. And then I would say you got to hide some money from yourself, and that is automatic deposit into a savings account, or even farther, like into a brokerage account, where it's going to take them a little while to get it back to you, that sort of thing. And then by spiritual means, that can be anything from things that are in line with your religion, like prayer, but also things like meditation, affirmations, lighting candles, doing feng shui, things like that. I have some videos on feng shui, especially things you can do to bring in more prosperity on this channel. So I hope you check those out. So with the Jupiter, of course, it's only going to be there for a few weeks. Then it's going to go back into Aquarius for a little while, which is, again, at least your sign. And then it will be back next year for a very long time, well, most of the year, for most of 2022 in your house of money. So you really want to think of, how can I make bigger money? What can I do to stretch myself? Because as I said, this Jupiter is so lucky that you can start to feel a little complacent and then miss big opportunities. So you know, as you do something, as you move towards making the money, you can make some really big money, and you don't want to miss that by thinking, well, you know, I have enough for rent, so I don't have to work for the rest of the month. Now, when it comes to your investments or money derived from a family business or your own business, you're not really doing an aspect. It's a really wide trine with, and it's out of sign, and Mercury's going to go retrograde. And so you've got a lot of factors working against you. It is in your house of risky investments. And so you might feel with this luck of Jupiter and Mercury retrograde that you might feel like, oh, this is my time to, throw all my money into Bitcoin or something. And I just want to warn you that this is not lining up for something like that. It is to do something that is much more under your control would be good, because rolling the dice at this point, especially with that Mercury going to go retrograde, to me feels like you're going to come up and say, oh, I didn't make it this time, but maybe I'll make it next time. And then you keep rolling and rolling, and that's not great. So if you're going to do some sort of tiny investment, yes, you might do that if it was a small portion of your portfolio. But with this, this is all going to line up much better for you in the future. This time, you do want to be cautious. Now, when it comes to money derived from career, now, again, we are looking at this with that eclipse energy there, and that says that things are changing in your job. Now, there is a possibility of you bringing in more money because the second house co-ruler, that Jupiter that we keep talking about, is making a square to that moon. So we have the energy there, and that's fantastic, but an eclipse energy is pretty volatile. So that means that you could find a new job, absolutely, and you can negotiate for more money. That's fantastic. As long as you're doing some sort of change, you can make more money. But if you're in your same job doing the same things, you're probably not going to make more money. This is something you have to fight for a little bit. But, because it's a square, you're going to feel like fighting about it anyway. And so, going into your boss and saying, look, these are the things I've done. These are my accomplishments. This is how much money I'm bringing to this firm. I want to make more money. And that's going to get a good response because you're doing this square. Now, when we look at risky investments, here's where, again, this is all ruled by that Mercury. You have Sun, North Node, Venus, and Mercury in that house. And the Mercury is the Mercury is making the square to Neptune, but like I said before, that Mercury is going to go retrograde, and that's what has me a little concerned. This is a great house. Yes, it looks fantastic, and that's how you might look at the contract they're giving you or the proposal, or like everything looks so perfect. But as soon as that Mercury goes retrograde, now something's changed. Now somebody's backing out, or now there's an extra addendum that you didn't see before. So I just want you to be really careful. This might be a great time to add to a current investment, because the Mercury would say, okay, now we're going to go back and look at it again. But to do something brand new, you may want to wait until we're outside of the retrograde period. Okay, Pisces natives, you guys are doing this lunar eclipse right at the top of your chart in your house of career. It is where you are most noticeable, and that means that anything that you're putting out into the world can be seen. So this is fantastic for looking for a new job because your resume is noticed over other people, but it is terrible if you are going to go out there and post something controversial, or if you are job hunting and have posted controversial things in the past, you might want to go in and delete those because they are going to be seen. So this is all about what your reputation is out in the world, because with the moon so elevated, it's like the public is seeing you. And so if you own a business or something like that, or again, like if you're looking for a job, how are you seen by the employer? Kind of try and put yourself in the employer's shoes and say, this is the person who's showing up, and you're showing up either completely prepared and knowledgeable about the company, and even can mention, even that the name of the CEO and all of that, or you're arriving late and, rumpled, and your resume shows things that are incomplete or things like that, and there's spelling errors. How are you presenting yourself? And the same thing about what you're doing on social media. How is that presenting your true beliefs in the world? Are you just dashing off something, or, forwarding, or what is it called? Retweeting something out in the world without really considering the ramifications of it. That's what can bite you with this eclipse. And so that's what you want to be aware of is, how do others see me? And yeah, you might say, well, I don't care what other people think, but you do live in a society that has other people. And so occasionally you want to work together with people and not alienate, most of the world. So this is a time to weigh that question of, whether I can, go out and just really state my opinion, or whether you need to say, no, I have to be friends with at least some people. So when it comes to relationships, you're doing a great aspect between Mercury and Neptune, and that is a square, and that does mean that two people coming together. So there is some really good energy for you meeting somebody new or moving your current relationship forward. So, and this is actually a really romantic combination because the Neptune's in Pisces and Mercury's down in the 4th house, which is a water house. So it's a good idea to actually move forward on, going online to find somebody, or to let somebody fix you up, or to, if you know somebody you're interested in, to just reach out to them and ask them on a date. When it comes to home and family, you have a beautiful house of Sun, North Node, Venus, and Mercury there, and that is wonderful. You might be having friends over or family members over. You might be going over to people's houses, people you haven't seen in a while, because things are opening up now. So you're having more connections, there's more happiness at home, so things are quite good. If you are looking to move with this energy, because that Mercury is retrograde, you do want to be a little cautious about signing paperwork during Mercury retrograde, because then every time Mercury goes retrograde in the future, you might feel compelled to move again. But this house is so good for you that I think that as long as you're mindful and you move cautiously, you can be quite successful. When it comes to your money, you're pulling money from that Mars that is going through your house of fun and excitement, as well as risky investments. And so there might be a really strong desire for you to do something that's a little bit more bold. And I think that that's okay, as long as, you're not betting, your rent money on something. But taking bold action sometimes, especially with your creative works, like publishing your book on Amazon, or putting your music out somewhere, creating an album or things like that. Some of those things could be really beneficial at this time, and that Mars is here to fuel you, to give you the courage to do something, to risk what other people are going to comment or say about it. When it comes to money that comes from a business or comes from investments or like network marketing or affiliate marketing, you're doing a semi-sextile between Venus and Mars, and so you can make money. It does say to remember to do the harder things, and that is the paperwork, the back office stuff, to check your website and update it. It's doing those things that take time and energy and that aren't really the fun parts, and that's really what's going to bring you more money this time. But it does say you can make more money than usual if you do these things that are, the kind of the dirty jobs. When it comes to money derived from career, now we have some interesting energy because there's an inconjunct energy going on between Mars and Saturn, and it's really wide, and Saturn is in the 12th. So everything here is kind of pointing towards making the same money as usual, or even making a little bit less, due to the fact that you're not as easily seen by managers, or, and this is where that eclipse comes in, because you're changing jobs, and so therefore, maybe there's a week lag time between getting paid, and so you technically end up making less money, even though you're going to make more money in the future. Now, these energies are going to line up in the future, so right now, if you're thinking about asking for a raise, you need to have a pretty good case, ready to show them, because they're not going to, just don't assume that they know what you've been working on, because the ruler of that house of money derived from career is in your hidden house. But I like the fact that this Mars in Cancer, and along with that moon elevated in your chart, those are in places that do say that you could step up and say, look, this is what I've accomplished. This is the list of things I've done, and so please consider this. And because of that wide inconjunct energy, I think that they, through some adjustments and things like that, you might get some of that. Now, when it comes to the risky investments, and those would be things like, buying a franchise or buying Dogecoin or something like that. Now, the Mars is not making an aspect to the moon. However, the Mars is in Cancer, which rules that moon. So we do have a connection, but I wouldn't say it's strong enough for a large bet. I would say you want to kind of pull back and make sure that you're looking at this very, very carefully. I'm also a little concerned, of course, because Mercury is retrograde, and that can cause people to change the terms of contracts, or for you to miss part of the contract, or maybe not understand it because it was written in some legalese or something. So your ability to make and accumulate, so long story short, you can make the money, yes, but accumulation looks difficult, which boils down to you might get a small amount of money with a promise of larger money, but that promise is not coming through yet, and that's what has me concerned. And so even though you think maybe this investment is fleeting and you got to grab hold of it now, it's ruled by that eclipse, and that has me concerned. I would say just hang back, watch other people. There's always going to be new investments being created all the time. You do not have to jump on the latest thing. In fact, you want to find something that is in harmony with your beliefs, with your sense of who you are. You want to find something in harmony with your risk level comfort. All of these things are factors, as opposed to just running after something that's really popular right now. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe and stay tuned, because LaRue wants to say hi.